Well, hello and welcome back to the latest episode of my Love Machine podcast. Now, there are so many different dating apps and dating sites launching every single week, it can sometimes be overwhelming. But what does it really take to bring out something unique, something niche, something that no one's thought of before? To help me discuss this fascinating topic, I've got an expert in the field. I've got David Minns, who is known as the niche online dating man. David, welcome to my podcast.
Hi, James. Thank you for having me.
I am delighted. Now, I've been really excited to get you on here today because you do something that nobody else really does. You have a portfolio of niche online dating apps, don't you?
That's correct. Yes, I spent quite a few years programming dating websites, kind of scrapping it, rebuilding it, scrapping it, rebuilding it. So that's been a journey of probably over a decade, I suppose now. And then I decided then to write a platform. So rather than trying to build individual sites, I wrote my own platform that allowed me then to produce niche sites quite quickly. So you can change a few pieces per site, but then I can deploy them with relative ease. And I've built up a portfolio of niche sites from there.
How many do you have now?
That's always a question, and sometimes I have to try and remember how many I've got. So as I was asked reasonably recently, it's 16 at the moment and soon to be 17.
That's brilliant. So what got you started and what made you choose dating in the first place?
Yeah, so I've always been into software and programming from an early age. So from, in the days, I suppose, of the Sinclair Spectrum, I'd sit, in a room typing in things. You type in the code for hours and you press a button and then it didn't work, but I never gave up. And then I had, when I was a student, I lived in Hull. So it's not really a very glamorous place, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it has a very unique, this is very nerdy now, telecom system in Hull. And it's one of the only places in the UK that's privately owned. So it wasn't a part of BT. And you could connect to the internet on a local telephone call, and the local calls were fixed at 5p for infinite time. So before broadband came around, you could dial up and be online for 24 hours for 5p. So the internet really grew up there very quickly. So I had my first connection in about 1991, which was pretty early. And I thought, wow, this is a great medium for just communicating with people. So I started to program websites in kind of everything. So before I did dating, I suppose my most successful site was bar and pub magic tricks. And so I made a pay-per-view website where you could watch a tutorial video of doing a magic trick, and then you could pay for the solution. So sort of an on-demand place really, just to kind of impress your friends. And I did that for a number of years, and that was quite popular. And then I really got the bug for making lots of different things. So I wrote some finance sites, some directory services, and I wrote a dating site. And I always made these things and then got distracted and went to do something else. But then I'd realized that without any effort, the dating site that I'd made, this was about 2007, had grown to about 60,000 members without any kind of effort or any marketing or anything. It just had grown organically. So I then decided that that's going to be, where I'm going to focus and try not to get distracted by other things, and then really just focus on the dating market. So that's how it came about, really. So I suppose by luck,
That's an amazing story. In some ways, there's many parallels to my own life, how I got into this, because I had the Sinclair 48K Spectrum when I was a kid, the best present I ever got. And there's so many people who probably got that, and it changed lives, didn't it, at the time? And I remember all these codes to try and cheat games. You type in for hours, putting cassettes into them. But then I went to university, and my university had one of the first internet systems. And I was doing online dating before it was online dating. I found it was a great way. I can use the chat rooms and the forums, interact with women. In fact, I've done a webinar recently about online dating. I'm talking about the same thing because this is how I got good at this. I learned back in the early days that by text and by using these strategies, you can really interest people if you know what you're doing, if you're creative. So I went on to this, and that's how I got started in the whole dating. Well, I got interested in dating in those days. That's a long story, a long time ago. Yeah. But now, so you got into this, and you had this is it an online platform? I presume it wasn't a dating app 10 years ago, was it? in 2000?
Yeah, so it wasn't an application, no. So it was purely web. I mean, I think it's hard to remember what the phones were like. I think in the early days of having an internet connection, the mobile phone didn't exist. So that was, you could only have, and then they were analog only rather than before they became digital. So that was a long time ago. But then, it was all web-based to start with. It was only really once, the iPhone, I suppose, had started to take hold that it was possible. I did write a mobile version of one of my sites, a very, very long time ago. And it was very difficult in those days because the screen size was tiny. I can't remember, the Sony Ericsson made, I think, one of the first color telephones, but the screen was like no bigger than a postage stamp. And I had a dating site in those days on something like that, but it was very, very, very challenging. But now it's considerably easier.
It's funny how things have changed completely. I remember I used to drive my parents mad with the bill for dial-up internet.
Yes.
You used to have to pay an absolute fortune to AOL, whatever it used to be back in those days. And times have changed on. Then mobile phones came on. And then mobile applications were a whole different way. There was a Mobi or something they were called, weren't they? It was something different. They used to have something different. The times have changed now, and it's all full-blown apps. And I actually watched a presentation of yours that you sent me, where you talked about the sites and how you choose these sites and what happens. And you said that the market is quite oversaturated now when it comes to these apps. And you said Apple don't allow you to do this. So if you're thinking, people out there might be listening to this today, either they're single and trying to find a good site to use, or maybe they are thinking about developing their own niche dating app. Because everyone thinks there's lots of money in this, and they want to give it a go. So do you think it's oversaturated?
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's challenging and expensive. So, I'm fortunate that I'm a real sort of nerd and geek, so I can do the programming myself, and that makes it a lot more cost effective. If you kind of sitting there with an idea, but you don't have the ability to program, then entry to market is really difficult, because somebody's going to say, well, if you want me to do a proper job to get like a basic product out there, that's going to be about 100K. And then by the time you've got some budget together to get some marketing together, and you're starting from scratch, you fire up your beautiful app and you've got literally, well, maybe just yourself in it to start with. So one account, it's a very tough struggle, and there's a lot of competition, to the level now that the Google Play Store is not so difficult at the moment, but for Apple, they're really putting a lot of constraints on dating apps. So they have a clause, I know it well, clause 4.3 in their terms and conditions is called spam. And it's not sort of email spam, but if you make a product or an app that fits into a certain category that's saturated, they basically just class it as spam. And that includes online dating. So that's now in that list. You have to make something unique and of a high quality. Fair enough, high quality, I mean, that's to be expected, but you have to have something that's different to everybody else. And so online dating is now grouped with Kama Sutra apps, too many of those, they don't want any more of those, and astrology. I always get astrology and astronomy mixed together. One of them I like and one of them I don't. And then also fart and burp applications. So Apple have said no, too many of those. So the kind of multi-billion-dollar industry of online dating is now kind of classed alongside with fart and burp applications, according to Apple.
I've got one on my phone for my kids' benefit, I should say. Little sound effects. Kids love all that. I can see why they've stopped it, because how many do you really need to do the same thing?
Exactly. Yes.
So, but what you do is you see this, you spot the opportunities for where there are gaps in the market, don't you? That haven't been.
That's
used.
right.
Yeah. So can you give us some examples of the apps that you've got and you've developed, sort of niches?
Yeah. So I started with kind of, I suppose, what you'd call sort of quite mainstream niches originally. So I had a general dating site, which you can't sort of class as a niche, and then I had some casual dating site. And 10 years ago, that would have been considered quite niche, but that's quite mainstream now. And these things turn into mainstream. And then other ones that I would sort of class quite mainstream now are sort of over 50s or senior or mature dating. But then in the last 12 months, I've tried to go for something just a little bit more kind of extreme, or with a bit of shock value, something that's very different. So the one that I'm most famous for is probably is called Dinky One, and that's for men with a below average penis size and partners who prefer it that way. And so I think it's pretty much unique. I don't think there's any more like that. And I launched that site thinking, well, I'm not sure if anybody is even going to be brave enough to join. What will happen? And it just went absolutely crazy. The media absolutely loved it, and it was Seth Meyers did a slot on US TV, and Comedy Central also did a really good segment on it. And so that was very, very, very successful. And out of all of my niche apps, is still the most popular.
Who would join the app? Who would join it and admit they've got a tiny penis?
Yes, well, I mean, that's the thing. I thought, well, no one's going to join, but they did.
Yeah.
No one's going to upload any profile photos.
Oh, let's see the pictures.
Yes, and I mean, it has a no nudity policy, and that's something that's very important, because if you want to migrate from this is on the web at the moment, it's not in the App Store, but if you want to migrate to App Store later on, then you can't have, the picture policy is very strict on the App Store. So as a general sort of, and it's strict but vague. So the best way is that you have to have clothing or a picture where it's appropriate for the environment that you're in, for example. So that's kind of a way to look at it. So if the picture's in a bar, then you have to be dressed as you'd expect to be in a bar or business. If you're on a beach, then swimming trunks and a bikini is acceptable, but for a bikini or swimming trunks inside the house is not acceptable. So there's kind of, on those lines, sort of segue over there. But no, so people were uploading, profile photos to that site, and it was amazing that it was so popular.
Is it a short-term novelty, do you think, or will it carry on?
Well, the initial media spike is massive. So, once it reaches mainstream television and every radio station in the world pretty much was talking about it, you get a huge spike. So in 24 hours, I had 34,000 people join. It's lower now, of course. So, every day there's probably at the moment now about 300 people joining a day, but that's been sustained now for almost a year. And then it gets spikes when other people pick it up in media stories, or somebody wants to write an article about alternative or interesting dating products. It's always going to be, oh yes, I remember this one. So and I've also after it's been released, noted, looking at the demographics, there were a large proportion of gay and bisexual men who joined the site. And I thought that might happen. So I've done some rebranding on that side as well. So for the LGBT market, it's becoming quite popular.
How many profiles are real, and how many of their friends setting them up for a joke?
Well, it happens. So there's a few things that are done. So when somebody, and this is the thing, actually, when you go back to trying to create your own application or dating site, some of it's to get the kind of core bones of the site is a reasonable amount of work, but to put all the extra bits in that you never see is absolutely massive. It's like a tip of an iceberg analogy, I suppose. So you have to have lots of stuff behind the scenes that isn't really apparent to the users. So one of those is that when somebody registers, you're sending a confirmation email to their account. And then if they don't do anything with it, then you let it expire and you erase them. So what happens is that people think, I'm going to sign up my friend to Dinky One, and they type in their friend's email address. Obviously, they get the email, they don't do anything with it, and then it disappears. So it kind of it sort of auto erases, I suppose. But it does happen. I get emails from people who, their friends have gone to their Facebook profile, taken all their photos, taken all their interests, and done a proper job, like really built a profile, and then, have to say, yes, okay, I certainly will just erase it for you. So maybe, I don't know, I suppose maybe one a week I get of those that somebody's asked for it to be taken down. I mean, some people might get signed up by a friend and decide to stay. I don't know.
I'm laughing here, but I think it's actually a very clever strategy, because even if they stay with you or not, it's all awareness for you and what you do in the brand, isn't it? And if somebody joins, I think you said to me that you sort of cross promote between your apps, don't you? Is it the same database that you share, or do I have to cut
so
this bit out? I don't know from the podcast.
no. So what happens is that because I've written a platform, like the majority of the code for all of my products is similar, because that just helps it to be more manageable. So if I, for example, work on a new security feature, then it just rolls out across everything. I haven't got to do that 16 times. It would be very difficult to do. So from a real like nerdy technical point, there's one massive database, but there's a column that specifies which niche that user is in. So a user, for example, on Dinky One, there's a sister site for that called Big One. So there's no kind of, I don't need to describe what that one does. But those users can't see each other. So they're separate. But I do allow people to swap niches. So some of the other ones that I have are for bald people. So we were on audio only, but James and I were talking before we came online about haircuts. So I don't have any hair. So I made a site for bald people, following a craze that was going around of hat fishing, where, you know, I think everyone's probably heard of catfishing by now, but there were men with dating profile photos with hats, and not revealing until later on that they were bald or follically challenged. So I thought that's a great opportunity for a niche site. You know, I haven't got any hair. I've got a dating platform. I know what I'm doing. Let's just get a product out there. So if somebody wants to, he's on one site and then wants to move to another, then they can switch quite easily between those.
If the hair grows back magically, they can go on to
yes.
Or their penis, they take some enlargement cream, they can go on to Big One after a while.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. Well, they're kind of like borderline. So, yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I know so many people that have started dating apps because they want to meet a partner. Now, I know that you're happily married, aren't you? So
yes,
different situation for you. But when you first started doing this back in many years ago, did you think, oh, I'm going to get some dates out of this? Did you use your own sites to get dates?
No, I've never done that. So it's only been, I've sort of been in a relationship or just been focused on the coding side. And if I've met people in the past, it's predominantly been like from friends of friends. So no, I've never used my own products. I have a profile on most of them just for testing purposes and making sure that things are right. But no, I've never been a user. I mean, there are some people that have done that where they've made a dating application and launched it in the store where they're the only person. So there's been a few cases where a guy's done that, and you know, it's like he's the only guy and anybody can join. And I'm not sure if they've been successful or not, but they certainly gained a lot of media attention.
And that's what it's about. The more media attention you can get, the more publicity, as you know better than most people, then the more you're going to promote the other apps as well. So they're going to become aware of you. And I presume if a journalist likes your stories and likes what you do, then you can then tell them the next story, the next app that comes along, and it will snowball, won't it?
Yes, that's right. I mean, there's a lot of journalists in the world, but there are certain ones that are kind of like the gatekeepers, really, that once they produce a story, that it gets re-syndicated and other people start to take it up. So yeah, it's all about building relationships with the media, and that's why I've kind of given myself a brand name of being the niche online dating man, to kind of get that momentum behind myself, really, that when I make a new product, I can contact people and say, hi, you wrote about this. This is my next idea. Would you like to write about it? And that helps to, as you say, build the momentum.
Because these journalists are looking for stories. It's their job to write about dating or relationships and all.
That's right. I mean, I think there's no people. I wonder kind of how you kind of, you go about this, but you've got hit the nail on the head there. Exactly. That journalists, their job is to create content for their outlet. So whether it's a TV program or a website or a newspaper, and they've got deadlines and they've got columns that they need to fill. So if you've got something that's exciting and interesting and different, or maybe a bit controversial, then they're going to take that from you. They're going to need that. So the idea that you have to have a large sort of budget to be able to get things into the media just isn't the case. If you've got something exciting and different, then the media will take that, because that's what they need to do for their publications.
I've noticed over the years from my own publicity that if you get a big story or a story at all in, say, the Daily Mail or something that's very well known, then other papers all around the world will copy the story, almost word for word, write it in their own words, and they will tell the story. You probably experienced that yourself. Is that what you mean by re-syndication?
Yes, definitely. And the publication you mentioned, the Daily Mail, is a key one. Yes, if you get some material in there, then yes, it will spread. And there's a few US equivalents that if you get them in I won't give too much away, but if you get them in some of the US equivalents, then that transfers directly to television. So there's a few these sort of key places that allow you to kind of avoid having to have a large marketing budget to try and acquire new users, which is a real challenge. I mean, that's the thing, is trying to get bums on seats without having to pay premium prices per user, because when you have a dating product and you're selling a subscription, for example, or some form of upgrade to kind of keep your business afloat, then the amount of people who do convert into paying customers is really small. It might only be, if you're doing really well, you might get 6 or 7%. But, for some products, especially if you offer quite a nice free alternative, then you only maybe half a percent of people that come into your product will purchase something. So it's very important to try and build momentum without large overheads.
It's important to remember that, you're right, because it's really hard to compete with even mainstream apps like Tinder and Bumble and Hinge. Everyone knows those three in particular, and they will go to there maybe as a primary choice. And after a while, they get probably disillusioned with it and want to try something else. But how does somebody who wants to bring out completely from the beginning a new app, how do they make money out of this? Is it just the hope that one day a bigger company is going to buy them? But I know you're a different story, but just generally, how can someone make money with this?
Yeah, it's a challenge, because there's a lot. If you follow like the dating industry, some of the publications will have a startup roundup that's done every week, and the amount of products that come out every week is just immense. There's maybe at least 5 or 6 a week. And then, I get to meet some of the people and the founders over the years, and sadly, a lot of them just disappear. So they make a product, it's got something interesting, but covering the costs of user acquisition and developers just makes it very, very hard to stay afloat. So the ones that have been successful have had so much momentum behind them. So here, they've had funding of multiple millions that they have to pump into the business at essentially a loss until they make a household brand name that then can continue on its own. So if you're a Tinder or a Bumble and anybody's doing any form of media about a relationship, it's there. TV programs or sitcoms will mention the products without paying for a product placement, or stand-up comedians will talk about their experience on Tinder, for example. And you can build that momentum, but that needs a huge budget. If you're kind of bootstrapping it at home and you haven't got that momentum, then I think you have to take very small steps. You have to make something that you can do in your spare time, and then start to build some revenue and some users, and then reinvest that and sort of snowball it from there. But it's far from easy. It's not an easy life.
It's not. I've seen so many apps, particularly in the UK, that have come and a year later they're just gone. And I don't know, I can't really think top of my head any of them that are making any money at the moment over the years. Because they come to me and they will consult with me, or they'll use me for different PR strategies. And it's sad they don't really last, because they're not maybe different enough. That's why they can't stand out, which is why yours are so good, because you're researching these niches left, right, and centre, aren't you? Using various tools you won't go into at the moment.
Mainly they just pop into my head. So I mean, you can't see it, but there's a whiteboard here full of notes and tasks, and there's, I don't know what the list is now, but I think there's probably about 19 like niche concepts on the board. And
it's a good job I can't see it, really.
They won't, and they won't all make it. There are some that are just not interesting enough, but there's a few, and I don't know, it just happens. You walking down the street, or you see something, or you hear something, and you think, wow, okay, that's a potential for a niche product. So they just sort of just appear.
How many ideas do you get, and how many do you work on at any one time?
So I try to do one at a time. I did at one stage. I mean, some of the technical stuff inside, it's easier to do multiple at the same time, because you have to, not being really nerdy here, but you have to put some certain hooks into your code. And if you're doing it once, you may as well think, well, I'll stick in another 5 at the same time. And so you kind of do that kind of groundwork, maybe together. But then when it comes to the main site and the brand, it's really just one at a time, because the logo design and the graphics and the artwork, it takes quite a bit of time to get that right. And you can build it and you look at it and think, I'm not quite right. I'll scrap it and do that again. And so that bit, you can only really sort of focus on one at a time. And then when you press that press release button and you email it to a few thousand journalists, and you get one that takes off, then you need the time to be able to go and do radio interviews or do something on the TV. I mean, TV's hard now with the global pandemic, but radio is still something that you can get to do quite a lot of. So you need time to be able to do that. And then people want to have, send you interview questions, and, then there's a lot of time just spent at the keyboard, just trying to type information for people. So you need to space them out. And I also think that you can't go too crazy, because if I have too many back to back, it's like, well, okay, David, we wrote about you last week. We need to
slow down.
We need to give some space. Yes.
How much of this do you outsource? Do you do it all yourself, or do you get design work done by somebody else?
I do it all. So I do the coding and the graphics and the PR and the marketing. So there's every, do everything. So the company is literally just me.
Are you ever going to outsource it?
I'm getting to the stage where there are some things that I might do. So the equation for building a product, getting it out there, doing the initial press release, building the momentum on the brand, I can do quite comfortably. Once the sites become sort of a little bit later in life, so reach maybe a year old, then you need to redo a bit more marketing push. And that's, initially my products launched just off the value of it being so unique. But then you need to start to do more longer term things. So at that stage, I think I probably need to do that. But at the moment, I can just about keep up. But I may look at it. The danger is that you just then spend a lot of time kind of like managing people or chasing things and not getting the main things done. And quite often, I don't know, I'm a bit of a control freak, I suppose. I might look at something and just give it here. Let me just do that. And I don't want that there. And I want to do this way.
I'm the same. In 15, 16 years of doing this, it's always me that does everything. Occasionally I outsource a graphic or something like that, or even a press release, whatever it might be. But now I'm slightly working with a great marketing coach, and I've got a Facebook ads team, and it's all been provided for me. And I'm very lucky to have this, because it's allowed me to expand now on all this. Yes. But I understand doing it all yourself. And what you've just proven to anyone out there thinking of starting their own dating app, if you really are willing to put in the effort and to learn how to code and to do all this, it is possible. Yes. But so many people think it's just taking the easy route. They're going to crowdfund millions and make their billions out of it at the end of the day. Yes. And I've seen so many apps come who have raised millions, and even very, very well-known ones, and they're not here now. They've closed down in the last year. That's
right. Yeah, I think a good strategy is to, I guess to really bootstrap it, go to Amazon new and used books, buy yourself a set of books and just read them. So I learned how to develop software originally from a book. And it was, I don't know what it was, probably about 800 pages. And I read it like a novel. So instead of, trying to just start like chapter 1, congratulations on learning, and then you just go through it. And it takes time. But, the coding, I think, is the key piece. If you can do that, then the other pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are relatively straightforward. So, to buy a book on marketing or sales or sales optimization, they're generally quite small. So you can get through one of those and it might only be 200 or 300 pages. And it just makes sense. You can read it and think, okay, I can apply those strategies, or they trigger ideas that you can apply to your own business. It's the coding that's the difficult one. You kind of read it and it's like, oof. And that takes the time. But But the thing is, if you're young and you're motivated, then you've got time, because let's say worst case, it takes you 5 or 6 years to really get a grasp on the software development. Then that's quite small in the time scales of a company. That and when you're kind of getting older like me, I'm approaching 50 soon. You're in a good position. So yeah, just get out there and just get stuck in and learn, and put the effort in, and it's possible. If you're 50 years old now, maybe it's not worth trying. Try something else, but invest in Bitcoin maybe. I don't know.
I wish I had.
Yeah.
They were saying 2 years ago, don't do it. It's all going downhill. If you'd invested at that point, you got a really cheap price and probably make you millions now. But
it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You slog your guts out with some things, and then you think, have there been easier things? Yeah, with hindsight, of course. Yes. If you'd gone for Virgin Galactic, Bitcoin and Tesla, yes, you could have turned your Amazon book fund into millions. But yeah.
I remember 20 odd years ago, there was this thing. It turned out to be a massive scam online. And then he spent £500. I knew it was probably a scam, but I really liked the idea of it. It was called Stock Exchange. And there's a whole Wikipedia about this. It was a whole, like a Bitcoin style investment program where you invest in these imaginary stocks and things. It was great fun. Every day your stocks were doubled, and you watch it and you get people into it like a pyramid scheme. And it was amazing. It was great fun. The whole thing just collapsed very quickly. It was all somewhere somewhere in Nigeria. Everyone lost their money, but I did enjoy that. There was a precursor to Bitcoin. I've always been scared to be involved in Bitcoin because of that.
Yes.
Back to you, David, because we are going to run out of time very shortly. What are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, so my next product is on the luxury dating side. So I'm trying to kind of have a portfolio that covers everything. So anybody coming in somewhere, there'll be a product for somebody. That's the idea. So it'll be hopefully out by the time this is published. So I can give everyone the name. It will be called Lusso. So it's a nice word, nice and short, Italian for luxury. And so it's going to be a luxury exclusive dating site and app. That's what I'm currently working on.
Fantastic. So, and then after that, what else do you have? Any other ideas you're going to launch, and what timescale? You probably can't tell me now, but
yeah, let me have a there's a few like general ideas. Yeah, I'll give you some exclusives. Well, some of them I can't. So
don't tell.
I want to do something on. I want to do something on mental health. So I'll do that. And
loneliness.
And then, but I think after Lusso, the luxury exclusive site, I think I'm going to go for something that's got some real shock value, just to really kind of mix it up. So we'll see what happens. I think I've seen a few that are similar, but they're not branded with the kind of shockness. So I think it'll have a shock appeal, but its overall message is the most beautiful message in the world. So that's kind of how it's going to be. And that will come later this year.
Fantastic. I'm excited to see what comes next then, David. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. We could probably talk for another hour on here, but I try and keep my podcast to around half an hour. So I know you're a busy man, got to develop your next projects and get on with things. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm sure I'll talk to you again very soon. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.